as I had shared with everyone when we were in the process of putting it all together, is the Dick Rosman Memorial Award winner, and that is the first time we've done it. It's a combination of money that was sent to the club in honor of a longtime member, Dick Rosman, and the club also has put some money with that to give a nice award. And Sarah had some stiff company, and our committee consisting of Lori Durant. Lori, would you stand, please? And Lois Kelly, and Teresa Beatrix, and myself. We had a hard time, didn't we?
It was.
Yeah, but we did a good job, I do feel. So, can you please tell our members who have worked very hard to put this money together for you, what you'll be doing in college and where you plan on going?
I'll be attending the University of Hartford, and I'll be studying environmental sciences with a focus on chemistry.
Wow.
And I remember when it used to be very difficult to find candidates that fit our criteria, because our criteria was quite stringent. It's not anymore, is it, Lori? No. Now we have the other problem, but that's a good problem. So, with all that being said, I have a presentation for you. The part is just fun, and that's the money in the white envelope.
Thank you.
And the club always buys something that if you're having a certain kind of day, maybe not the best, just read it, okay?
Okay.
All right. Congratulations,
Thank you.
Sarah.
I appreciate it.
So, Lori, could you come up, and Lois come up, and Teresa come up so we can do a picture with all of us, the committee and our winner, and the family. No, you stay.
Speak a few words about your hydroponic.
Oh. I won't stop if you want to. So, someone taking a picture?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, Teresa.
Oh, Teresa's on her way. There's a lot of people in this picture.
Excellent.
Okay. And I really appreciate you coming to meet everybody tonight. It means a lot to them.
Thank you.
All right. Very,
Thank
very
you.
welcome. We also this year gave our Windsor Garden Club Scholarship, and you know that we all do many, many different things in the community to earn money for that one. So I'm going to have Will Stillman's parents come on up, please. And no, they're not the winners, but they're going to tell you why they're here, okay?
Well, I just wanted to say, Will did want to be here tonight, sorry, but he's also a soccer player and qualified for nationals, so he is practicing and preparing for nationals tonight, and he will try to come back at the end just to say hi, because he gets back a little bit later, to say hi to a few people that he can connect with, just to thank you personally. But he also sent a letter that he wrote, and so
I'll read it in his voice.
His voice, oh.
Dear Windsor Garden Club, thank you for awarding me with this scholarship. I'm truly honored to have been selected, and I'm incredibly thankful for your generosity. I appreciate all of the efforts of Garden Club members to fundraise and support this scholarship. I also greatly appreciate your commitment to environmental studies. I've learned a lot during my coursework and participation at Loomis Chaffee, and I hope to build upon what I've learned during my time at Bates College, where I'll be majoring in economics with an emphasis on environmental and sustainability issues. I'm particularly interested in how economics can be used to combat climate change, encourage renewable energy development, and develop policies that promote environmental responsibility. My ultimate goal is to work in the field of environmental economics, where I can help bridge the gap between economic growth and environmental sustainability. This is not a new interest for me, as I have been researching these topics throughout high school period. In my applied economics class, I worked on projects that investigated the economic viability of green energy initiatives and how policy incentives can encourage investment in clean technologies. In my college-level environmental science course, I went deeper into studying renewable energy, investigating its potential to reduce environmental damage while also examining its economic impact. These experiences have strengthened my desire to work at the intersection of economics and the environment. I'm excited to continue on this path when I arrive at Bates. The college's strong commitment to environmental sustainability and interdisciplinary learning is perfectly aligned with my interests. I'm especially interested in Bates Economics Department's work on renewable energy projects in Maine, which applies economic research to real-world environmental challenges. I hope to contribute to similar projects, gaining practical skills that will enable me to make a significant difference. Thank you again for your investment in me as I pursue this path. I truly appreciate your generosity. Sincerely, Will Stillman.
Oh, that was so because we definitely had two great award winners with us tonight. Even though Will couldn't be here, I think we got a feeling for the kind of young man he was. So we had two wonderful award winners. Now we also have something very nice with us. We have a national speaker. And the reason that we were lucky enough to get her, because as you know, Jim is the president of the Tobacco Museum. And in that capacity, he got to meet Ted and Becky Jones, who are associated with the American Beekeeping Association. So that's how I got to know them, and that's how we were lucky enough to get our speaker for the evening. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So she is the American Honey Queen, and her name is Cheyenne Bastian-Brown. She is the daughter of Corey and Jennifer Brown of Ralston, Pennsylvania. She is currently, although this isn't true anymore, is
This is
it?
old news.
Oh no. So the bio that I downloaded said she is currently a fourth-year student at Pennsylvania State University, but she has since graduated. So now she is graduated.
About 3 weeks ago.
She is majoring, or she did major, in agriculture and extension education. In school, Cheyenne has been an active member in multiple organizations and has served in many various leadership roles. In her spare time, she enjoys blogging about agriculture and playing with her dog and scrapbooking. So without any more further ado, I would like to introduce Cheyenne, and she'll take over. So please welcome her. Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cheyenne Bastian-Brown. I'm currently serving as the 2025 American Honey Queen. I'm going to get into a little bit of information about myself, as well as what the American Honey Queen program does, and a little bit about our wonderful friends, the Honeybees. So first, a little bit about me. So in perspective, I'm from a small village, not a town. It's too small to be a town. Called Ralston, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up. I was born in Williamsport, about 15 to 30 minutes south from there, where they play the Little League World Series every single year. I've been in Pennsylvania all my life, so I was very lucky to be able to do some travels in college and get to serve in various advocate roles as I continue to grow up. I did not grow up in agriculture. I like to say I grew up with agriculture, and agriculture grew me, because it all started when I was a freshman in high school, involved with the FFA program at my local high school. So lots of growth over the past couple of years, almost a decade already. And right there is a picture of myself, as well as our 2025 American Princess, Amelia Burnham. She's from California, and this is when we were crowned in Reno, Nevada back in January. So our terms serve from January of 2025 until January of 2026, and then we'll have the opportunity to be able to crown 2 new amazing girls to advocate for this amazing industry. A little bit more about me. My bio is outdated, unfortunately. We haven't gotten around to updating that yet. But that is actually a picture of me from my graduation photos. I did graduate from the Pennsylvania State University. I was at main campus all 4 years. I majored in agricultural and extension education with a minor in international agriculture. So my focus and hopes after my year of service is to actually become a substitute teacher. until the following school year, where I would start working as a secondary agricultural educator. And so that means that I would teach high school students, grades 7 through 12, so middle school and high school, but in Pennsylvania we call them high schoolers. Teach them all about agriculture, so animal science, environmental science, plant science, all the basis of how we as Americans get to be able to eat and clothe ourselves. So it's amazing to be able to back the industry that's helped me grow a lot over the past couple of years. And that middle photo is actually from my spring internship. So I was asked what my job on the side is. This is a full-time job. This is an amazing position. I do travel a lot. But in the spring, I was serving as an education intern for the Greenwood Agricultural Department underneath Mr. Michael Clark. So he was my cooperating teacher, and I was in the classroom for 15 weeks where I saw about 150 students every single day from grades 7 through 12. And got to teach them all of those topics and actually put the teacher hat on for myself. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. It definitely helped me in figuring out what I wanted to do in the future. And then over there, that last picture is actually from when I served as the Pennsylvania State Honey Queen. So some states do have Honey Queen programs. So girls are able to be able to go on to the next level of serving as the American Honey Queen, applying for that position through their state programs. Unfortunately, not every state has a state program, but we still have lots of young, ambitious young women who are interested in honeybees and the honey industry, and they're able to apply for this position through an independent application process, which is what our American Honey Princess did, Amelia. So lots of great opportunities, lots of experiences. And this is just a little bit more about the overall American Honey Queen program. So I've gotten to travel quite a few times during my year of service so far. I'm about 1 day away from being 6 months until I retire, so that's a little crazy. But as an organization, we work to help connect the beekeeping industry to people's everyday lives. So we want to make sure that every single person knows the connection of beekeeping and the honey industry to what you have and what you work with every single day. We also share these connections in lots of unique ways. So in that very bottom, little bullet point there, you can see I attend various things like fairs, festivals, classroom and civic organizations, much like your organization this evening, to share knowledge and information on honey and the beekeeping industries. And then also, we just want to increase honey consumption for the entire United States. There's lots of ways to consume honey. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I have some awesome brochures that you get to take home if you want one. And just a couple of the other things that come from the hive. So let's look at what a roadmap looks like, and because I'm a teacher, there might be a quiz at the end of each of these sections, so make sure you pay attention. So today's roadmap, we're going to talk about the honeybee life cycle, we're going to meet the bees, talk a little bit about pollination and how the beekeeper plays a role in pollination as well, and then go over some honey products. So first, the life cycle of the honeybee. There are 4 stages. So the honeybee will go from an egg to a larva, to a pupa, and then a full-grown adult where they'll enter the hive. It takes about, give or take, 21 days for the entire process to happen and for the honeybee to be able to enter as a member of the hive. We'll go through each part of this process a little bit individually. So first we have the egg. The egg is laid by the queen. The queen is the only honeybee in the hive that can lay eggs. She's the only one with the reproductive organs. And she'll actually meticulously go through and check every single cell to see if there's already an egg in there. And then she'll lay an egg. Now the egg looks very similar to that of a piece of rice, but it's much smaller. And on top of that, the queen will lay about 1,500 to 2,000 of these a day. Yes, so it's a very large number. She will try to move efficiently. That's what you want in a hive, is an efficient queen. And eventually the eggs will develop into larvae, which we're going to get to see in the observation hive over here. So the larvae are those little white grub-looking insects in there. And at this point, this is where they're actually being taken care of by other worker bees in the hive. So they're being fed, they're being checked on, they want to make sure that the larvae are continuing to develop. And they're being fed a substance called royal jelly for about 2 to 3 days, unless it's a queen cell. And we'll talk about that later. Then they get fed a different type of substance that helps them grow. and helps them continue to develop into a pupa. So a pupa is white. It's starting to develop all the things that we see to use to identify honeybees. So you can see right there, those are the legs. We have some antenna. Those big spots on their heads, what do we think those are? They're their eyes. And then you can kind of see the development of the wings on the back. So this is a crucial time of development. They're still going to be in their cell. As you can see, because the honeybee is developing in there, all the way through its life cycle, it's very small. So there can only ever be one egg in a cell. And then, after about 21 days, you're going to have the amazing adult honeybee that emerges. Now, the adult honeybee can look very different depending on what its role in the hive is. So we're going to talk about the 3 different types of honeybees in the hive and their roles. We have the worker, the drone, and the queen. And we're going to start first with the worker bee. So the worker bee is the female honeybee. She performs all of the work in the hive, except for laying those eggs, because who does that? The queen. So she does all the work. She doesn't really have a lot of help. There's about 40,000 to 60,000 bees in a typical honeybee hive. So there's quite a few of them that are there to do the day-to-day maintenance. And they all have lots of different jobs. Now, as you can see up here, the worker bee does have a stinger. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. It is barbed, so it sticks, and that's how you know that you've been stung by a honeybee as compared to other stinging insects. And she's very similar to the queen, which we're going to talk about here in a couple of seconds. So up here are all the jobs of a worker bee. So if the worker bee does all of this, she has a pretty long life cycle, huh? That's what you think? She actually only lives to be about 4 to 6 weeks old. So the worker bees will actually work themselves to death. They continue working until everything in the hive is done, and then eventually they just stop. Their bodies can't handle it anymore. So during their time period of 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the environment and what's happening, they will go through all of these different jobs up here at different points in their lifetime. So some will emerge and they'll become cleaning bees. They're going to be the maids of the honeybee hive. And they're actually going to go through and clean every single cell after a new bee is born. They're going to make sure that all the waste is taken out of the cell because honeybees are very clean. They don't want to contaminate their food or have any cross-contamination with the pollen and honey. Up here, we'll also see that some will work as guard bees or armor bees, and they will actually sit at the entrance of the hive. And they're going to wait for some type of threat to come. And then they're going to alert the rest of the worker bees, or they're going to attack you themselves. A couple of things. Like I said before, honeybees do have barbed stingers, so them attacking you is the very last line of defense. They really don't want to do that. You'll actually hear a buzzing sound, and that buzzing may intensify. So that's kind of their first warning. And then if you continue coming closer, you may get a couple of warning stings. They release a pheromone with that, and then that attracts more worker bees. So there's lots of ways that they protect the hive, but their biggest goal is to protect that hive and that queen. That is their livelihood. Up here, we're also going to see there are some bees that work as wax bees. They are the builders or constructors, so they will create the hexagonal wax frame that you typically see in a bee hive. You're going to have some worker bees that work with just the honey, so they're going to help transport it whenever forage bees come back with that nectar. And then they're going to take care of it. They're going to cool it. They're going to make sure that it's at the perfect viscosity for them to be able to keep it in the hive. Along with that, we're going to have some bees that help the queen in her queen's court. So that's their only job. They maintain her, they feed her, they bring her water. She doesn't have to do anything. They do it all for her. So it's pretty nice for her. But that's their only job for a little bit. And then they may move on to be air-conditioned bees, where they actually work and they use their wings to cool down the hive and make sure there's some ventilation, because there's lots of busy bodies in there. And then at the very end of their lifetime, you're going to have forage bees. And forage bees are the honeybees that get to leave the hive, and they go out and they collect the nectar that they use for honey, and the pollen that they use for food and protein. So they're kind of seeing the world, and they're getting to have fun, while everybody else in the hive is working. So next we're going to have the queen. In the hive, there's only one queen. She is the only honeybee that is equipped with reproductive organs. And that's because she's being continued to be fed that royal jelly. that helps develop those reproductive organs that she has. As you can see with her, she also has a stinger, but it's not barbed. And she's not going to want to sting you because she doesn't have to do that. We're going to talk about the use of her stinger in a second. Up here is a photo of the queen's court. So what will happen is that the queen will actually move around. And when she's moving around, you'll kind of see a circle form around her of worker bees. That's the queen's court. They're taking care of her. They're following her around. They will cool her. They will bring her water. They will clean her. They'll take care of her if she's tired. They do everything for her. Your Majesty is taken care of. You don't have to worry about her really doing anything herself. She's just constantly laying eggs. So the worker bees in the hive want her to be as efficient as possible so that they can have more and more of a population. Right here is a queen cell. So when we went through the life cycle of honeybee, we saw that this is kind of what it looks like. So this is wax capping that's protecting the young or the brood. And then that wax kind of like ball that's hanging off of the frame is actually called a queen cell. So the queen cell is a little bit larger because she's a little bit longer in her abdomen. So she has to have more space to be able to develop. And they'll actually have multiple of these queen cells going at one time if they are queenless. Some commercial beekeepers will take those, they'll become queen rearers, so they'll actually collect the queen cells, they'll purposely make hives without a queen, and then they'll sell the queens so that people have more efficient and genetically diverse queens in their hives. This is the royal jelly that the queen is fed throughout the entirety of her stages of development. So as you can see, she's a little bit bigger, pretty significant amount is given to her during that larval phase, and that helps her with those reproductive organs as they continue to develop as well. So the question is, I always get this question from high schoolers, so bear with me. What if there are two queens? Does anyone in here know? They fight. So this is why a queen has a stinger. She doesn't want to use it on you. She doesn't want to use it on the bear like you see in the movies. She is using it specifically because there can never be two queens in a hive. So she only ever wants there to be one. That is her. So she takes out the rest of the competition. So the barb of a queen, like her stinger, she doesn't have a barb on it like a regular honeybee. So she'll go through and she'll sting each cell so that all competition is gone. If two queens emerge at the same time, they're going to go back and forth stinging each other until one of them dies. If both of them die, the process starts all over again. And they wait for the next queen cell to emerge. So honeybees are hardcore. That's what I tell students all the time. They are super interesting. And then our last bee is going to be the drone. So the drone is the male honeybee in the hive. And his only job is to mate with the queen. So drones really just are kind of fat and lazy, and they just eat. They will eat hives into having depleted resources. So you may be thinking to yourself, what happens to them in the winter? Well, since their only job is to mate with the queen, that's why they have those big eyes, they're a little bit bigger because all they do is eat. They are evicted in the winter, and they are actually kicked out of the hive. Because all they would do if they stayed there all winter is eat. And the hive does not have the resources for that. So they get the boot and they get kicked out. And typically the drones will end up freezing or starving or being eaten by something else. And then in the spring, the queen will lay more drone eggs. So she can decide, based on the population, what she needs. And she knows the cycle of the environment as well. So have no fear, there are more drones made, I promise. So honeybees have lots of other uses as well. And one of the big things is pollination. So as gardeners, I'm sure you all know about pollination. We're going to cover a little bit of it, just in basic terms. So pollination is the process of an insect of some sort, a pollinator, which honeybees are, going from one flower to another. When they land on that flower, their bodies, because they have these little tiny hairs, are sticky, so they collect some of that pollen, and then when they land on the next flower, they deposit a little bit more of it. So looking at the parts of the flower, and we're going to talk about one in particular that's super important when we're talking about honeybees. You're going to have the stigma, style, ovary, and ovule on the pistil. This is the female part. And then you're going to have the anther and filament on the stamen. That's the male part. The one part that I really, really, really want to point out is the petal. So the petal is what's going to attract that pollinator. For honeybees specifically, they can only see ultraviolet colors. So they can see pinks, they can see yellows, they can see light yellows, even oranges. They can see blue, they can see the color of my dress. They can't see red. So they will not pollinate flowers that are red. So if you're looking to start a pollinator garden, you really have to be knowledgeable on those types of colors, what flowers there are. Most of the time you'll see a lot of mixes, and we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes, where they actually identify that it's pollinator friendly. And what's good for honeybees is good for all bees, which is also good for a lot of different pollinators. But looking at the process of pollination a little bit closer, it allows plants to reproduce. So this is how you may get your fruits, your vegetables, some nuts. Some foods are very important to like our overall food system in the United States. So pollen from the anther will stick to those hairs on the pollinator. The anther is the male part. They're gonna fly to the next flower, and when they land, that pollen sticks to the stigma of another flower, while they also pick up more of that pollen from the anther. So it's really a process. There's lots of things going on at the time, lots of things that are lining up perfectly, and during this time, honeybees are searching for nectar to use for honey. And they pollinate while doing this. So do we think that honeybees are pollinating on purpose? No. It's completely on accident. They are doing this because they're trying to help their hive and help themselves and make sure that they have food. But it is something that benefits all of humanity and agriculture. So let's talk a little bit about how beekeepers contribute to pollination. So there is something called migratory beekeeping that's seen in commercial beekeeping. So commercial beekeepers have a large sum or large number of honeybee hives that they take care of. They're mass producing honey. And commercial beekeepers will actually move their bees across different states or their home state to help with the pollination of different fruits, vegetables, and certain crops. So like, for example, during the almond blooms in California, beekeepers from across the entire United States will take their honeybees, much like what we see in this picture, they'll put them in truckloads and they'll haul them out to California. And they'll do the same thing in Maine for blueberries. So it's pretty profitable. Crops that need pollination, again, include, for example, some blueberries, almonds, apples, alfalfa, much, much more than that. But with alfalfa at the bottom, that really is the basis of agriculture in the United States. So honeybees aren't just good for people who want to garden or anyone who is interested in pollinators and protecting pollinators. It's good for anyone that likes to eat. So there are over 3,500 species of native bees as well that are busy pollinating every day in the US. And 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we eat is contributed and only exists because of insect pollinators. So that's something that's really important, definitely a fun fact that you can share. And then you may be thinking, well, what can I do to support pollinators? There's lots of ways. We're going to talk about a few of them. So for one, it just ended. So unfortunately, if you want to take part, you possibly still can. I mean, it's up to you. No mow May. So basically the basis of no mow May is you don't have to mow your lawn in May. Because those are the early forage season for honeybees. So they're going around searching for forages for nectar and pollen that they can take back to the hive. The nectar they use to turn into honey, and that's still an easy, quick protein, like energy source for them. And then the pollen they use for protein. Don't mow, because during that time, if you don't mow and you allow the weeds to continue to grow, like dandelions, for example, those are early forages that honeybees use. So that's just one way that we can help. So no mow May, keep that in mind, especially anybody who has a wife or a husband and does not want to have to mow. Then you can collaborate. So, for example, it's awesome that we have some people called beekeepers that are amazing. And they do a lot to help with pollination and food production and honey production because there are a lot of people that use honey for a lot of different things. So, talk with your local beekeeper, work with your local beekeeping groups, work with your state association, talk with them about how you can talk with people about policy, efforts being put on by those beekeeping groups, or even just easy ways to support your local beekeeper, like for example, buying local honey. So that's one way. And then finally, the special slide I put in here for all of you, because I know you like to garden. Plants, flowers that support pollinators. So there are lots of examples up here. This is actually from a national key that I found online with a organization that's associated with the Penn State Pollinator Lab. I just picked Penn State because it was the first one that came up, and this was a really good resource. I'm not biased whatsoever, I promise. But it has an amazing kind of like list of different plants that you can plant that are native to your region. And then if you go lower, this is like a whole PDF. It has more information at the bottom about certain plants that are native to certain states. And so, for example, you can find things like common milkweed, or New Jersey tea, or lance leaf, coreopsis, partridge pea, and it has an entire key of different pollinators that you can help when planting these plants. So as long as you're knowledgeable on the color thing, and you're kind of looking at all your different options, you're still going to be able to get those beautiful colors that you like to see in the spring and the summer, while also helping pollinators in lots of different ways. And some of these are annuals, some of them are perennials, so you have lots of different options as well. And then we're at our final stop. So our last thing is honey production. So in the U.S. alone, there's about 200,000 beekeepers and 300 distinct types of honey. 3 and 300 are very different numbers. So there's 300 distinct types of honey, and honey differs in a lot of different ways. So welcome to Honey 101. We're going to do a little crash course on honey. So honey varies in flavor and color and sometimes even smell, and it all depends on the nectar source for the honeybees. So whatever flowers they're visiting, that's going to dictate the flavor of your honey, the smell of your honey, the color of your honey. So it all kind of depends. So wildflower honey, for example, is a mixture of a lot of different plants that beekeepers know are blooming at that time. So the honeybees may be collecting pollen and nectar from all of them, and then they'll be using that nectar to make the honey, and then it's a perfect blend. In certain states, like for example, I was just in Texas, and they have something called snow on the prairie honey. It's a very earthy taste, because the plant is a very early plant in Texas. It's also very dark honey. In other states, like Florida, you'll see things like Tupelo honey. Tupelo honey is great for anybody who has diabetes. It has very low sugar content, and it's also very light and kind of fluffy to me. And it's very light in color. It's extra white. In different seasons as well. So in the early season, you might see a lot of honeys that come out as water white, because it's the early season, those nectar flows are just starting. Whereas at the end of the season, you're going to see dark amber. And with dark amber, those nectar flows are slowing down or stopping altogether. So all of this kind of varies depending on your area, where you are in the country, what type of nectar is being used, and then also the time of the year. And then obviously, honey can be used for a lot of things. You can eat honey, you can have honey in your tea, it's a natural sweetener, but it also can be used for different medicinal properties. So honey is a natural humectant, so it keeps moisture in, and that can be used for your throat. It's also been found that honey is used for different cuts, scrapes, and burns to help heal them, kind of like a bandage. Some people use honey to help cure their seasonal allergies, so they'll actually buy honey from a local beekeeper and eat some of that honey every single day. And they're basically microdosing themselves with all of the different pollens and nectars that you see in your area. So it helps build up a tolerance to all of those. In addition, there's some wonderful studies going on. Specifically at the University of Texas, San Antonio, there is a professor that's looking into the regenerative properties of honey, so how it helps to recreate skin cells, how it can be used for acne, the different medicinal uses for it beyond just consuming it. Along with helping with seasonal allergies, we also see that a lot of the time with bee pollen. So what will happen is bees will come back, they have pollen in their pollen sacs on their legs, as well as all over their body. A beekeeper will put a trap out, they'll collect that pollen, they'll bottle it, and then you can use it as kind of like granola on your yogurt or like a mixture into your morning coffee. It's still a natural sweetener. It does taste a little bit different depending on the area. And then it also does help with allergies. So that's another option. And then obviously we have wax. So who in here has seen Burt's Bees chapsticks? I love Burt's Bees too. So that's wax. So it's used in some chapsticks. They have a colored wax chapstick that is basically like lipstick. There are candles, wax burns, so like the cubes that you can get that are scented. They do the exact same thing. They put them in a mold, and then you can actually burn them just like you burn the wax cubes. And they smell because they have a natural scent to them. So lots of ways that we can use all the products in the hive beyond just eating honey. There's also combed honey. Combed honey is the wax from the honey, or wax from the comb, with the honey still in it uncapped. And that's like the most natural form of honey that you can possibly get because it's cut straight off the frame. So lots of opportunities to be able to consume something that involves the work of a beekeeper and the work of the honeybees. And then just some information. So the American Honey Queen program does have a Facebook and Instagram. It's under American Honey Queen program. You can see more about my travels throughout the United States, as well as the travels of Princess Amelia. Down here, if you have any questions or need really good educational resources or recipes, Buzzing Across America is our blog. So we put out information every single month to educate people on different aspects of beekeeping and honeybees, but we also have tons of recipes as well as educational resources that are great for students in all grades and ages. And then down here, just a couple of other things. So I am selling quote raffle tickets. If anybody would be interested, I don't have a picture of the quote, unfortunately. But it's beautiful, it's handmade, it's going to be hand painted. So it's with a little bit of a different texture. The money goes back into supporting the American Honey Queen program and my travels, as well as the future American Honey Queen for next year. So I'll be up here if anybody wants to talk to me about those. And then finally, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions about anything I talked about? Yeah?
If I see a honeybee foraging in my garden, is it likely to have come from a beekeeper? Or is it likely it could be native?
If I see a honeybee in my garden, is it likely it came from a beekeeper or could it be native? So here's the thing. There are still wild honeybee hives. They're not as common, and there's no real way to prove that it's wild. A lot of beekeepers will actually go out and they'll be looking for things called swarms. And swarming is when a queen will actually leave her current living space. So it might be a hive box, it could be a hive in a tree, but I doubt it. And all of the worker bees will go with her. And it's because she's not happy with where she's living, she's not happy with how big the hive is, there's not enough room for everybody, just things like that. Like she's very particular. So they might swarm, and then the beekeepers will actually go out and collect those, and they'll become a new hive for them. I would say, from my experience, 9 times out of 10, it's probably from a beekeeper of some sort. Hobby beekeeping is becoming a much larger kind of organization and interest for people because we're very interested in obviously saving the pollinators. We spend a lot of focus on that, but also just pollination in general. And making sure that pollination is becoming kind of a focus and in the limelight. I know in Connecticut, from talking to Becky and Ted, it's required that you have your hives registered with the state. So there is a way to also go online and look and see if you have any beekeepers in your area. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
How long does the queen live?
How long does the queen live? So that is a loaded question because it kind of depends. So in commercial operations, a lot of commercial beekeepers are going to try to switch out their queens once every season, maybe even 2 times. So they're going to check and see if that queen is actually efficient with reproduction that she's laying. If she's not laying, that queen's going. They may do that on purpose as well, so they might remove a queen and then start selling queens in something called queen rearing. But it all kind of depends. With hobbyists, they tend to keep their queen a little bit longer because they're doing it for the joy of it. It's not really about efficiency. She's going to do her job unless the workers in the hive notice that she's not as efficient. Then they might end up actually going through, they'll suffocate her. Sorry, some of the things when it comes to honeybees are a little bit morbid. But if she's not efficient enough, those worker bees want to make sure they're able to continue repopulating. And if she's not laying eggs and she's not laying them at a rate that they like, they're going to get rid of her. So they're going to suffocate her, and then they're going to remove her body from the hive, and they're going to wait for another queen to come out from a queen cell that emerges. Yeah, imagine the face of like kindergartners when they ask these questions, or sometimes even high school students, especially when it comes to talking about drones. Lots of reactions.
But it's what they'll remember.
Yes.
If you start pollinating in California the almonds, and you lose so many bees along the way, when you get to the blueberries, is there enough bees to be effective?
So I'm actually gonna hand this over to Ted because Ted's a beekeeper. Fun fact about me, I'm not a beekeeper. I got involved because I really enjoyed bee research and learning more about honeybees through the Penn State Bee Research Lab. But Ted is an actual beekeeper, and I think he's gonna have a fantastic time answering this question.
That's a good question. When they leave California, they start out in the Dakotas. They bring the bees down south to activate them again because they're in their winter mode. The pollination takes place the end of February, beginning of March. When they move bees, they move them at night, so they're all back in their hives. They put them on tractor trailers. They have nets. We used to move our bees on a small trailer. We had nets, and you move them at night because they're all in the in their colony to the next location. When they get there, they take them off the trucks. They spread them out in the orchard or the blueberry patch, pumpkin patch, whatever they're pollinating. And the first couple hours, the bees come out and they just go in circles. They're orienting to the sun, land objects, big trees, buildings, and within an hour or two, you'll start seeing the foraging. And they start foraging again. You don't lose many bees. Sometimes you might lose a queen, say 5%. You might lose 5% of the queens. Could be a truck hit a bump and the queen got pinched. You know, that's part of the business. We used to figure we lost 2% of our queens whenever we moved. So we would know that right away, and we wouldn't wait for them to make a queen because it takes 45 days from the time they start a queen to the first emerging worker. So we would immediately put a mated queen in to keep that hive in production so the population doesn't go down. I don't know if that answers the question. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but that's basically.
Yeah.
There you go.
Go ahead.
The overturn of the trailer that was coming in from Canada the other day, for the bees, were they able to recover them or?
What was that?
So the question was, with the overturn of a tractor trailer that was carrying honeybees the other day.
In Seattle, Washington, I think it was.
Seattle, Washington, does that sound familiar?
It was in the paper, I saw it. Yeah, they can, depending how bad it was, it looks like in the picture, about 3/4 of the load stayed on the truck, even though it tipped over. And they'll bring beekeepers in at night, unload them, set them up as hives. The bees will go back in their hives. The next night, they'll come in with forklifts, lift them, and move them to a safe location, and then they can evaluate them. If the hives are split open and smashed, they're destroyed. they bring them to a landfill or something like that. It is a costly endeavor, you know, you're probably talking $300,000-400,000 worth of bees. Most truckers are insured for it, but some people, they go cheaper, and when that happens, they find out, oh, I don't have insurance for it. So it could really sting you.
Are there any other questions? Yeah.
Honeybees are, I don't believe they're native here, I'm not sure where they're from, but
Oh, yeah, they are.
they're the one pollinator that humans can bring from one place to another and utilize them in large agriculture, like what we humans do. If we didn't have a large patch of agriculture like a pecan field or blueberry fields or something like that, if it was just are there enough native pollinators to just go through like my garden, I think there's enough native garden pollinators to handle my garden. I mean, how would you, without major giant agriculture, is there a need for the honeybee? For the, I don't know, the industry of honeybee keeping, I guess.
Good question. A couple of things to go along with that question that were pointed out. One, honeybees. Are they native to North America? So, in previous years, it has been said that they were not native. There is an individual that is currently doing research. Her name is Dr. Foster Cox, and she has actually found that there are ancient drawings of native honeybees, and honeybees that were not brought here before the early settlers. Along with that, there's also been different things that have been found of not skeletal remains, but like
Some fossils.
yeah, fossils. Sorry, sometimes words get mixed up. But they have found fossils of honeybees as well in North America. So it is possible that the honeybee was native to North America. There are different variations of honeybees. The most common one that you will hear is the European honeybee. And just because it's called the European honeybee, everyone thinks that it's not native. There's no proof completely that that type of honeybee that was here back even during the time of the dinosaurs, before the dinosaurs possibly, was in any relation to the European honeybee. So they may be two different species of honeybee, two different breeds, but there's still constant research coming out. That's the one really cool thing about honeybees. It's one of the most researched insects in all of the world. Two, to go along with that. So the European honeybee is the honeybee that you're going to hear the most about. European honeybees have been genetically bred multiple times to be as gentle and as tame as they are. So they are the most common bee to be moved around. Honeybees are the most common bee to be moved from different things such as agriculture and mass production. Obviously honeybees are doing this beyond their knowledge. They're doing it mostly to collect food. But it is a huge resource to people. So a lot of agriculture, and in my opinion, mind you I said my opinion, so this is not a fact, but honeybees are pretty much the basis of agriculture. We talked about alfalfa. Alfalfa was up there on that list. Alfalfa is used for different breads, also in different cow feeds, and different feeds for other livestock. So that's the basis of our food system right there. If you don't have pollination for alfalfa, that's not possible. The reason why honeybees are used is because they are the one insect that creates something as a byproduct for human consumption, such as honey. But two, they're also very efficient. So they're a lot faster. They're constantly working. So it said 1/3 of all food, like 1/3 of every single bite that we take, is contributed to insect pollination. There's still 3,500 different native species that are pollinating. So yes, the spotlight is sometimes on the honeybee, and the honeybee is important because it's very efficient, but it's also one of those things where you have to think. The honeybee is cute. The honeybee is used for lots of different things. You can go up and talk to a beekeeper, they answer your questions. There is native, pollinator people, so people that are researching native pollinators are very passionate about it, but what's good for one is good for all. And so it's more of those things where, again, in my opinion, we should all be working together for the mutual. Like, we all want to be able to eat. We all want to be able to have clothes on our back. We want to be able to go to the grocery store and see that milk on the shelf. And it all starts with supporting all bee populations, not just honeybees. And yes, honeybees get the spotlight, but there are still natives. Now, I will say it is a matter of fact that a lot of the things that are affecting honeybees are also affecting other types of bees, like native pollinators. But there are tons of ways and tons of research constantly being done to be able to support all of the populations. So it is out there. It's just a matter of Googling the correct words, because a lot of people, when they hear bee, they think honeybee first. Good question.
Alfalfa, you usually get about 3-4 cuttings of alfalfa a year. Do they have to pollinate each cutting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when they pollinate it, they're making a seed.
Okay,
That's
to plant the next crop.
next crop, so seeds are here. The other thing that they're very valuable for is our environment. They pollinate weeds and everything. And that's where all your animals and wildlife get the seeds off flowers for food. That's the other thing that's very important for our environment. Berries and things, power lines, all kinds of wild berries. Animals eat that, birds eat that, and the bees are pollinating that for the environment. So not only agriculture, environment, everything else that goes with nature.
Thank you.
Yes.
Monarchs are decreasing in our population, and they are hovering or either on the endangered species list. How are bees faring? The honeybee faring?
So I know for a while, in the early 2000s, they were on the endangered species list.
No, I don't think they ever made it.
They didn't?
There was
I thought
talk.
they did.
Did they? I can't answer that. I know there was talk of it. There was talk of it, but they didn't want to do it.
So not confirmed, but we think, maybe, somewhere along the line, they were either toppling on the line or they were on the endangered species list. Mind you, that was also probably over a decade ago, more than a decade ago, because that would have been when I was little. But in a matter of a couple of years, you see a lot of people who are starting to support honeybee, like foundations, different organizations that are going out and advocating. The American Beekeeping Federation does a lot of policy, so they talk with a lot of legislators. They have a lobbyist who talks about bee laws. A lot of the state associations for the American Beekeeping Federation, you'll see that they also go out and talk to a lot of people about policy and how to benefit the honeybee. But there are people that care. So honeybees are faring very well. I will say honeybees will always have their challenges, but it's also one of those things where we have constant researchers that are putting out new information every day to help support the honeybee. It's just a matter of finding those different articles and all of the scientific journals and research to be able to have the correct information at that very moment so that you're able to continue to help honeybee populations.
And just one other quick, how many different kinds of honeybees are? I have a friend who says she has Italian honeybees, and you mentioned.
What are the different types of honeybee? I'm making Ted talk a lot today.
The basic ones we have are Italian. Remember, all our honeybees came from Europe. And when we migrated from Europe, all our vegetables and crops came from Europe. And they evolved with the honeybee. That's why we have them here today to pollinate our crops. So you have the Italian honeybee, that's from the Mediterranean off Italy. We have the Carniolan bee, which is from the Alps of Yugoslavia. So that's a cold weather bee. They do better in cold weather. We have the Caucasian, that's over by Greece. That's another one. Now they have a couple hybrids. They have the Sasquatch from Saskatchewan, okay? That's a new one that's out there that they're promoting. And then we have a new one, the Poline bee, which was developed in Louisiana at the Baton Rouge Bee Lab through crossbreeding and things, and that has a tendency to have mite resistance and rapid buildup. Those are about the basic ones. There are some other species. I've been to Australia. They have the stingless bee over there, the black German bee. We don't see those here because the black German bees are very aggressive. but they're good pollinators. So, and then there's other ones throughout the world. Africa has their own species. They have African bees. They're part of the honeybees, but they're, yeah, what's the word? I can't think of the Greek name.
African
Scutellata. They're Scutellata, the term. They're a very aggressive bee. They could be, you could pet them today and tomorrow they'll drive you back to the truck. They're unpredictable. We don't want those here.
Before anybody brings up, Africanized honeybees are in the U.S. They're in southern states and western states. There is research going into crossbreeding them so that they can be bred with a more gentle honeybee because they are amazing honey producers. I've also been asked that multiple times this year already. So I try to, if it comes up, I try to answer as soon as possible. I saw a hand back here first.
Well, there's a category up in Africa. In southern and northern Africa. My niece is going to North Africa.
So the question was, are African honeybees in southern and northern Africa?
Well, of the continent of Africa, they have different species of African bees. Yeah, so they have bees, you know, up in Libya and up there, they have honeybees. You know, in those countries, it's a way of life, you know, it's survival. So yeah, but the natives know how to handle it. I mean, I've been to Kenya and South Africa, and there's different bees over there, and the local people know how to handle them.
Cheyenne, is the goal to let us view the hive?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So I think maybe what we should do is take one more question.
Okay.
And then move into that, because that will take some time.
Okay.
Is that a good idea?
We'll be here for a while, so.
Now you're gonna make me be the bad person. How to
I
put those
know.
last good. You go ahead.
I remember seeing something, I think it was on the news. In China, they had no bees, very few. And what they did was they took people into the fields to hand pollinate the fruit trees. And I was
true.
wondering if you knew about that.
Yeah, that was true. It was overuse of pesticides, and it killed everything around there, and they had to go into the orchards and hand pollinate.
Yeah, I remember.
That was probably like 30 years ago.
So
It can happen.
it's actually been said before. I can't remember if it's Albert Einstein or Thomas Edison, so I feel horrible that I don't know that. But it's been said before that if all pollinators were to go extinct, so pollinators didn't exist, and we had to lead on to hand pollination, that we would only last 4 to 5 years as a human society. So in retrospect, it's just that pollinators are important. And yes, honeybees get the limelight. Honeybees are also very important. But what's good for honeybees is good for all pollinators. And I really want to push that because, again, the basis of agriculture, the basis of every single thing that runs our country is that of food. Food is important. Food starts with pollinators and honeybees.